Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am Zach, and with me as always is Chris. What's up, buddy? Long time no see.
Long time no see. Hello, everyone around the world and the interwebs. My dear friend Zach, we are back. It has been a long time. We're
Yeah.
shaking the rust off, figuring out how to talk again. And,
I
and
never really figured out how to talk though, so that's still a work in
we,
progress for me.
yeah, yeah. So apologies to our listeners that we have been gone, but sorry, we were working our professional lives, like going so
Yeah.
being pretty busy with that, but we're just thrilled to be back and talking about what we love to talk about and sharing that with everyone. And so it's going to be great. Yeah, Zach, I'm excited. Hopefully you're excited too.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a long time. We've talked many times about how the podcast has been kind of a nice respite for us and a way to talk about stuff we're passionate about and kind of get away from the daily grind of life for, an hour or two at a time. And I definitely have missed it and missed doing it. So for those of you watching and listening all over the globe and the interwebs, welcome back to a new episode. It has been a while, but we'll hopefully in this little break that we've had just due to scheduling and travel and so forth, that you have had a chance to go back and watch or listen to previous episodes, and you have, because our previous episodes have been doing very, very well. They've been going up, and people have been watching and listening, and we've gotten new countries. Austria is now listening to us, so that's awesome. So
Awesome.
welcome, Austria. We appreciate that as always. But yeah, it's nice to get back into talking about our passions and what we love. And Chris, for those who are watching this, they may have noticed something new at the beginning of this video.
Yeah, at the beginning we have something so cool. And we want to give our special thank you to Richard from Vector Craft Designs for helping to craft the intro video for us. And oh, it was so cool coming up with the idea together and mixing it in a fun process working with Richard on helping that making a reality. I love it. What do you
Yeah.
think? Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's great. It symbolizes our show and the things we're passionate about. We love. There's a little Easter egg back there in the back. So if you go back and watch this after you've seen it the first time, or click the little scroll wheel back for those of you who are watching this, you will notice something in the background floating that's spinning. You just take a look and see. You may notice that. If you're listening to this, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, and check it out. And also, if this is the first time watching or listening to us, we greatly appreciate that. Be sure to go to Facebook and Instagram, check us out there, find all those great details for the latest episodes, celebrity guests, which we have more coming, by the way, because as of the time of this recording, about a week and a half or so, we're going to be sitting down again with Caitlin Hopkins, actress you may know as Kilana, the Vorta from Star Trek Deep Space Nine's episode The Ship. She was also in Voyager and a million other things. And we can't wait to hear updates from her, what she's been up to, how her teaching was going, and talk some more about her career. It'll be a wonderful time.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be so wonderful, and I look forward to it. And she is such a very warm and lovely individual. Just it is going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, at the time of this recording, our previous episode where we had Sean back on with us was great. It was great to see him and great to have him back on with us and chatting about what he's been up to, about Cobra Kai season 5. Go out and watch the reel. Made a little video clip of that where you can see the reason why we didn't get as much Mike Barnes maybe as we'd like to in season 5. But fingers crossed, hopefully he'll come back for season 6. So Cobra Kai writers, bring him back again, please. Thank you. That is all. But yeah, it's been great. So it's been busy, lots going on. Family and I are in the process of getting ready to move, so that's going to be a big undertaking. And so there'll be another little pause in there in between that while we move and get all set up to start recording again at that point. But we do have a lot coming between now and that time, so we look forward to that. However, we took a little break from the Mirror Universe in our Spotlight series episodes, which are basically just another name for deep dives, where we go into a specific episode of Star Trek or a movie of something else, and we deep dive into it and really talk about all the things that stood out to us and things we really enjoyed and were meaningful to us. We talked in a couple of Spotlight episodes. We did the Year of Hell Part 1 and 2, and then the City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you mentioned the city on the edge of forever. Thank you. And
Yeah.
so I had something like recent pop up on City on the Edge of Forever, and so William Shatner uh, he had a discussion with Neil deGrasse Tyson, Dr. Tyson, and they were talking about what is William Shatner's like favorite episode of Star Trek. I think William Shatner was recollecting his discussion with Stephen Hawking, and Stephen Hawking's asked him,
Mm,
"What's your favorite episode?" And so it is City on the Edge of Forever. And
that
I
makes
thought
sense.
I thought that was amazing. And he was talking about going back in time, and the idea of love, and what does that what does that affect? Who does it affect? So super cool, as I was thinking about like our discussion on City on the Edge of Forever. Um,
That's really cool. I'm
yeah.
glad you said that, brought William Shatner up, because I forgot about this. So took my son down back in early March, the day after his birthday. We went down to LA and went to this thing called Collecticon. And Collecticon, I thought there was going to be a little more variety of things, but it was mostly like Pokemon cards and some anime and stuff like that. But one of the guests there was William Shatner.
Wow.
And so I went to the table that was out in front, and I wanted to see if they had a specific image of him. It's this iconic image of him in his chair with his hand on his chin and everything. And I don't have that image, and I wanted to get a photo signed. Uh, and so they had the photo. I purchased the ticket. We got in line. We got there like first thing, and so we were one of the first few people in the line. Went up there. I said, talked to him for a second. He signed the photo, and I looked at him. I said, "Hey, Mr. Shatner, I just want to let you know that my son James's birthday was yesterday." And he looks at James and he goes, "Well, happy birthday, young man. That's awesome."
Oh.
So I told him, I told my son, I said, you're only 8 now, and you were not going to remember this, but maybe one day looking back, you'll go, oh yeah, when I was with my dad, I got a happy birthday from William Shatner, aka Captain Kirk. I mean, I don't know how many 8-year-olds have gotten happy birthday wishes from Shatner. So that was cool. He was so incredibly nice. He was incredibly generous and nice to my son. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I'm glad you brought that up because I'd
Yeah.
forgotten about that.
Oh man, that's incredible. I'm so glad to hear that. And thank you for sharing that about Collecticon. That's so cool.
Yeah,
So
it was
cool.
cool. Yeah. So, Chris, we have had a few spotlight episodes where we have dove into the mirror universe, and now we're coming up on the next episode of the mirror universe. As you guys may have recognized by the title of this video or episode you may be listening to, called Shattered Mirror. And let's kind of just really quickly go back and talk about how we got to this point in the mirror universe.
Yeah, and this is actually the fourth in Star Trek. This is actually the fourth kind of episode of the Mirror Universe, coming back all the way back from the original series. And this has been such kind of a neat like sub series that we've done, like deep dives
Yeah.
on each of these Mirror Universe episodes. But it did. I mean, it started in the original series, and you and I we talked about that first Mirror Universe episode in the original series. It was so cool with Kirk and Spock and Uhura. And then we went into the next one, because the next one goes into DS9. So there's the DS9. I think it was Crossover
Yep.
was the next one from Crossover, and then Through the Looking Glass was one after, either after that, either the next one or the one after, and then there was one more before this one that the slips my mind, but it's also a DS9 one.
Oh no,
So
you had it right. So it was
oh yeah.
crossover Through the Looking Glass, and now we're on Shattered Mirror.
Now we're on Shadow Mirror. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool that we've already had two other preceding DS9 Mirror Universe episodes, and
Yep.
we've got a little bit of history um of the intendant on who she is, and kind of the representative person that she is in the Mirror Universe, a very 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 kind of evil kind of individual there. um
Yeah.
and we were introduced, the previous Mirror Universe episode, we were introduced to Jennifer Sisko. So we got to meet her, learn a little bit about her, and saw some of the interaction between Ben Sisko and the Mirror Universe version of Jennifer Sisko. And that takes us naturally into this shattered mirror episode, because naturally we're gonna learn more about Jennifer Sisko. um Jennifer Sisko is obviously like um a very pivotal character for both Ben and Jake, and she affects Ben and Jake like a great deal. And I think in terms of the mirror universe episodes, this seems like the natural kind of course that the mirror universe episodes would have gone. It's like, okay, now that you realize there's a mirror version of Jennifer, then yeah, you're certainly going to explore how Jennifer can affect Jake more, and like how Jennifer can affect Captain Sisko more. So I thought they perfectly kind of went there on this one.
Yeah. And initially in crossover, we see Kira and Bashir are the first two members to go into the mirror universe since Kirk did in TOS, right? So you
Yeah.
get that kind of start where you see the doppelganger for Kira, which is the intendant, right? And then I don't know if we remember if we meet I don't think we meet Bashir as doppelganger in crossover. I want to say it's not until through the looking glass when Cisco crosses over where we meet
Mm-hmm.
him and a few other people, Dax's mirror counterpart, and so forth. And then, obviously Jennifer Sisko, we meet in Through the Looking Glass as well, and realize she's still alive in the mirror universe. Um, and Cisco then goes in and parades himself as his counterpart, right? Which then brings us to this episode of Shattered Mirror, which is interesting in the name. And I was thinking about this name, and we'll kind of talk about where I think maybe the meaning gets into it towards the end. Because I think the ending of this episode is where you kind of put the pieces together and say, okay, now I maybe understand why it's called Shattered Mirror versus something else.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah, let's go ahead and jump into this, Chris. So we start the very beginning of this with Jake Sisko in one of his usual looking spots on the promenade where him and Nog used to hang out.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, Nog's not there because Nog's, at the academy right now. And
Yep.
you see like Odo coming, and pretty much Odo asking, like, what are you doing, Jake? And um, Jake's kind of in a very contemplative like mood right now, missing Nog and kind of thinking about all of that. Um, so I thought it was a good kind of opening, like because Jake's gonna meet the other version of Nog later on in the episode, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's kind of a nice opening there where he's remembering that. So nice, and a nice moment with Odo too. um
Yeah.
and and you get to see there's a little bit of interchange between I think Quark comes along, right? Quark comes along and talks to them, and he's pretty much talking about Nog, and um giving Nog a hard time for going to the academy. But then after Jake leaves, there's just a quick interchange between Odo and Quark about friends, and I think yeah, one of them makes a remark like, "Well, yeah, you have no friends," and like, what are you talking about? But it's funny because you know they deep down they're friends, and
Yeah.
so that was cool.
It's interesting how the relationship between Odo and Quark develops over the series in
Yeah,
DS9, right? It's this kind of disdain for each other because Quark's always trying to pull a fast one, and Odo's always trying to catch him, and he does sometimes. And then other times Quark gets away with stuff, and so there's that interplay. I did find it fascinating, Chris, that the very beginning of this episode is focused on Jake, and I think if we look at the totality of this episode, I think the focus from a relational standpoint is based around Jake, right? Jake's going to go to the mirror universe, right, with his dad. Well, not with his dad. He's going to go with his mom in quotes, and Dad's going to come after him. But this is a lot about Jake, right? Because Jake is lured to the mirror universe by a woman who looks just like his mother, right? The mirror universe version of his mother. And anyway, so that scene at the beginning is great. I loved what Odo said. Odo always, I felt like, had this soft touch with the young ones, right? This idea of, like, excuse me, he says here, when Jake goes, you always used to chase me away. And Odo was like, I never chased you away. I chased Nog away. Which just kind of going back to the idea of this disdain he initially had early on for Quark and anybody related to Quark.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a touching scene in the beginning, right? Where he says, you stay as long as you like. He knows this is the empathetic side of Odo here, right? He knows that Jake is missing Nog, and that Jake and Nog, when they were friends, or are well, still are friends, but when they were younger, got into some mischief, right? They were little kids. They were got into some mischief on the station. But Odo never, I don't ever feel like ever really came down hard on Jake. I mean, maybe because part of it's because he's the station commander's son, but I just think part of it is kind of the empathetic, soft side of Odo.
Hmm. Hmm. That's nice to see too. Really
Yeah,
nice to see too.
yeah,
And where would Odo be without Quark, or Quark without Odo? They're like,
yeah.
they have to be they have to be together, right? They have to.
Well, yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship, I
Mhm.
think, right? Because so Odo was known as this nickname given the Constable when he was there during Terok Nor, when it's Terok Nor, right? And then he becomes the security station, the chief security officer of the station, right? Their head of security. He wears a Bajoran uniform. And he's still called the Constable by Cisco, but he's there to ensure that the station's kept safe. He's the head of security. Would he really be needed if Quark wasn't there running the back alley, dark underworld, criminal underworld of the station? So, and if Odo wasn't there, would Quark try as hard as he does? I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind there's a symbiosis to their relationship. You know what I mean?
They give each other purpose. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. They
Yeah.
really that's true. They really, really do. But yeah, it's very interesting. So Jake leaves, and he goes back to his quarters, and all of a sudden he walks in, and there's his dad sitting there with what appears to be his long dead mother.
Yeah.
And he asked that question. He's like, "Mom?" I mean, talk about confusing for a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that has to be like so confusing. And you Captain Cisco could have given Jake like a heads up, like
Yeah,
a little
right.
bit, like, like instead
Just
instead Jake goes into the quarters and there she is.
I mean, what kind of imagine the emotional overload that would be on him, having no expectation of this of a woman who looks just like his mother, or in his eyes, his mom, just appearing there out of nowhere
Yeah, yeah,
after all these years.
yeah, incredible overload. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I, that was like a pretty I'm sure it was disconcerting, like for Jake, and Jake's like natural kind of reaction is, he wants to get to know Jennifer, of course. um and so but I know that like Cisco's got work to do. I believe at the station there's a chancellor or someone that's coming over, and because the chancellor's coming over, they've got to spend time with the emissary, or Captain Cisco, so he's going
Oh,
to be
I
pulled
think
away.
it was a Bajoran minister.
Bajoran
Yeah,
minister,
Bajoran
yeah.
minister, I think. And he was trying to blow it off like, "Hey, Kira, go give him a tour to station." And she's like, "Yeah, I tried that, but he needs to see you."
Yeah,
So that kind of opens the door for this, kind of alone time now that Jake gets with the mirror universe, Jennifer.
yeah, that's right. And like as Captain Cisco leaves, they're saying, "Oh, well, let's have like dinner tonight," and he's like, "Okay, depending on how long it takes, then
Yeah.
let's go dinner. Let's go do dinner." So he leaves, and then he comes back and discovers that they are gone. And he asked the station's computer, "Hey, locate Jake," and Jake is off of the station, and all he finds on the counter is that multi-dimensional like transporter device. And
which he recognized, right? But
Yeah,
from the last Mirror Universe episode that he went uh or crossed over.
yeah, absolutely. And I'd be upset. I mean, he's upset, but I think I mean anyone would be like
Right?
kind of upset in that situation.
Yeah.
Um, and so he's uh but he realizes that, and then he wants to go on a mission to go back to that alternate universe to get them. And he talks to his crew. He talks to Major Carey, and he talks to Chief O'Brien, wants them to come with him to be able to go to the mirror universe so that they can go and get Jake back. And they all get on the transporter to do that and go back. And it only takes Captain Sisko. So Kira and Miles O'Brien are left still on DS9.
And I'm trying to think, the last Mirror Universe episode where Cisco went over for the first time, was he still commander at the time? Because he's obviously a captain at this point, right? In this episode, he's a captain. I can't remember if he
Oh,
was a commander or not in the last episode. Not that it really matters. I'm just
mhm,
trying to think because I believe the last episode was in season 3, and I don't think he is promoted to captain until season 4, which is when he kind of changes his look, right? Where he has kind of
mhm,
still has some hair but grows the goatee and then loses the hair and then goes to the look he had as was it Hawk or whatever that character he was before he was on Star Trek.
mhm, mhm.
So anyway,
Good.
not that it
Yeah.
matters. I was just thinking out loud, but
Yeah. Good question. Good question.
Yeah, so it very interesting because Kira and O'Brien were fully prepared to go over with him, and then yet, as you said, he's the
Mhm.
only one that's able to go over. I think when he shows up, something to the effect of Smiley says something and says, well, you were the only one who was invited or whatever, right? Like, well,
Yeah.
where are my other two officers? Oh, you're the only one that was invited. Um, which is interesting. But he does ask where once he does beam over, he does ask where his son is, and they say that oh, Jake's with the professor, referencing Jennifer because she was a professor there. And it's interesting too because you look at the lengths that Cisco went to. I mean, he went to some pretty long lengths to go get Jennifer out of the grips of the Alliance in the
Mhm.
last episode through the Looking Glass. Uh, and then she repays him by coming over to his universe and stealing his son.
Yeah. That and you say that, and what I also think was interesting because he's got to be that would just like make us furious, right? So if that happens, try and take our son. But I mean, the reason they take it are taking his son there is so they can get Captain Cisco there, so Captain Cisco can help him build finished with the build of the Defiant, so that they can be able to defend themselves against the Alliance that's coming, because that's a big problem. They've retaken um the station, but taking the station is one thing, being able to hold on to the station is a complete other thing. And with their current defenses, they can't like defend against the Alliance, so they need Cisco, and Cisco's just, I guess, like so incredibly incredibly important. But what kind of I thought was kind of funny was this, despite them taking his son, and I know they've kind of uh, they don't quite have his son hostage, but almost kind of like that. Cisco's kind of like, fine, I'll help you. He's like, and there's a couple times he's like, yeah, I'll help you. And then he had his in one of his exchanges, like it was a terse exchange with Jennifer, regarding Jake, and like, you took Jake over here, and um, everybody's like, yeah, but I'll help you. and and then later, like on the Defiant, like when they actually get the Defiant, and they get it running, and Smiley's gonna command the Defiant, and then Cisco kind of pauses and he goes, fine, I'll captain the ship.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like
Yeah, he does it's not exactly being it's not really hard for them to twist his arm to help, you know what I mean? It's almost kind of like Cisco just can't help himself, you
yeah.
know, which I find very interesting. Yeah, that I noticed this too, that Smiley isn't super far off from O'Brien.
Hmm.
in the Prime universe. So we talked about this, I think, before in the crossover episode, as well as the Through the Looking Glass episode, right? And how either similar or dissimilar the mirror universe counterparts are to their Prime universe folks. And I find, to me, Smiley is maybe the closest counterpart from the mirror universe to his Prime universe self versus the others. I don't know if you kind of compared and contrasted each character and then their mirror universe counterpart and thought who is kind of close and who is way far off.
Yeah, I think you're completely right about Smiley. Smiley is very close to Miles O'Brien. I believe I read somewhere the actors were commenting on how they were playing the mirror universe versions of themselves, and Cole Meany had in Cole Meany's mind, he's like Smiley's pretty close to Miles O'Brien, but he's maybe like maybe a little bit more of a scuzzier version of,
Well,
of Miles
in the
O'Brien.
first episode crossover where we meet O'Brien, right? So he's a human, which means a Terran, which means he's looked at as
Mhm.
inferior by the Alliance, right? But yet, because he's able to fix things, he has a little bit of freedom to move about the station, and he's not, you know, shackled and chained and processing ore, dilithium ore, right in the center of the station. Um, but he's he's a bit of a weenie. He's very, very unsure of himself. He's very nervous and scared all the time, which is definitely a contrast to the regular Miles O'Brien, who fought against the Cardassians, the big war at Setlik 3. I mean, Miles is not afraid of anybody. I mean, you see in many episodes where they beat the tar out of Miles O'Brien, and he consistently stands up and doesn't just, take it basically. Um, so there definitely is differences, but I do think that he's maybe the closest to his Prime Universe counterpart, that is Smiley.
Yeah, because Smiley, I feel, is just, yeah, you're right. I think he's very, very close. Smiley just had the disadvantage of not having the same opportunities that Miles did. So Smiley's kind of finding himself now, kind of realizing, hey, I've got these skills. And he's kind of gaining his confidence um through through the episode, and through kind of realizing like, hey, yeah, we can stand up against the Alliance. I've got skills, we can do this. So he's kind of gaining traction, gaining his confidence, becoming more and more like um Miles
Yeah,
O'Brien, just
yeah,
just with that. Yeah.
yeah. That's really true.
Yeah.
Very, very true. So we then get to see Julian Bashir's counterpart, who's now Captain Bashir. Everybody's a
Captain
captain
Bashir.
now in this
Yeah.
episode. Everybody's Captain Smiley, Captain Bashir. Everybody's a captain now, and he comes into the scene and is like, "Is Sisko going to help us or what?" And Smiley says, "Yeah, he's going to do it." And then he immediately punches Sisko, which of course we know is getting him back for when Sisko punched Bashir in that cave in the previous episode.
Yep, that's right. And yeah, Cisco's just kind of, he takes it. And but Bashir, the mirror universe of version of Bashir, Captain Bashir, is very different than the Prime universe
Yeah,
version of Bashir, right? He's
very different.
Yeah. So I thought that's probably fine. That it makes it cool, makes it kind of interesting. Just as
Yeah,
the mirror universe version of Major Kira, the intendant is very, very different. Um,
yeah. Kira, Dax, and Bashir are pretty darn different from their counterparts. I would say, they have a big gap and differences
mhm.
between their Prime universe. So it is always cool to see when you see these mirror universe episodes. Well, how much different are they going to be? What are you expecting? Right? Maybe you have an expectation for one thing, and then you see something else and go, oh wow, that's way different than what I was expecting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do enjoy it when they are quite different than that.
Yeah. But then Cisco does end up going to Quarks, and that's where he finds Jake and Jennifer talking to his best buddy from the Prime Universe, Nog. But Nog isn't exactly the same as he is in Jake's Prime universe.
Right. Nog is the owner of the bar, the owner of that establishment.
Well, yeah,
So yeah,
because Quark was killed. Remember, they killed Quark in, I think was it the first episode, the first, was it crossover, or was it in Through the Looking Glass? I want to say it was the very first one,
I want to say it
the
was
very first Mirror
crossover as
Universe.
well.
They killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because Quark was actually like a sympathizer, right? I think he was helping
secretly,
them.
yes,
Yeah.
secretly, yeah,
Yeah, and they took care of him.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Nog is Nog is very different, and I think Nog kind of scoffs at the idea that Jake and Nog are actually friends, like in the Prime universe, which is kind of funny right there. Um, but Sisko finds like Jennifer and Jake, and then he he talks to Jake, and he talks to Jennifer, um, and this is where I believe Sisko says to Jennifer, "Hey, leave. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you guys. Leave Jake alone."
Yeah.
And she's like, "I can't leave him alone because he's not. He won't leave me alone."
Yeah.
So I thought,
Well, but I mean, think about it, right? This is a teenage boy who lost his mother when he was young. So if you
Mhm,
think about it, approximately ish three between 3 and 5 years prior, right? Because you see the opening scene of DS9 right in the pilot Emissary, where the Battle of Wolf 359 happens, right? And Jennifer's
mhm,
killed in that attack on the ship. Cisco can't save her, but is able to get out and get meet up with Jake, and that's where she dies, and that's what 3 to 5 years ish or so prior to this. So, she's been gone for a little while, but he was a young kid. I mean, he still is, right? But he was a young kid when she died, and so for a son to see his mother now all of a sudden right in front of him, even though in the back of his mind he's like, "Well, it's not really my mom, but it's my mom." That'd be tough. It'd be really hard to not want to, be around her constantly, having not had her in his life.
mhm. Yeah, for sure. I gotta imagine what's like going through Captain Cisco's like mind, because things have just got to be like so confusing right now for Captain Cisco. It's like, what in the world is the next thing that's going to happen? What's
Yeah.
what's the next step that's going to be here? Because
The
this is
the
going to be so confusing.
Yeah, and I would say I think maybe the one misstep here, just a little bit misstep here by Cisco, is that maybe he doesn't put himself in his son's shoes and say, if I was Jake and I saw this woman here who is literally my mother, basically, uh, I think I would have a hard time too, not being drawn to her, right? Not wanting to be around her. Um, so I think maybe he could have empathized with Jake a little bit more. I mean, he obviously is trying to protect Jake and keep him out of harm's way and getting involved and doing something that could get Jake killed, right? His Jake. But we also learned too that the mirror universe Jake is dead. So it's flipped in the mirror universe. Jennifer's still alive, but Jake's dead. Whereas in the Prime universe, Jake's alive and Jennifer's dead. So interesting how they flip those two because she makes a remark that her son is gone. And
Did
so there's that draw where each other's counterpart is gone.
I missed that? I missed that because I remember the exchange where Jennifer's talking. She says something like, "Yeah, I don't have a son." Like and she's like, your Jennifer's gone, when she's talking to Captain Cisco. Your Jennifer's gone, but you've got Jake. I don't have a Jake. I don't have a son in my universe. And I missed it. That
Or maybe that's what she meant. That maybe I miss. Maybe she said I don't have a son versus my son. Like maybe that's what it was, and I just thinking about it wrong.
Gotcha. But it is
But regardless, she doesn't
yeah,
have a son,
yeah,
right?
she doesn't have a son, and
Yeah,
it is a really cool dynamic, right? So
yeah.
so yeah, Ben has Captain Cisco has Jake has a son. She doesn't have a son, and her her version of Benjamin Sisko in the mirror universe, he was kind of a bad guy. You know,
Yeah,
and
slightly.
yeah, and he's dead and gone.
Oh, now that I think about it, they wouldn't have a son because the two of them were kind of married, sort of, but they were apart, and he was a
Yeah,
womanizer, and so they wouldn't have had a son. So you're right. I was thinking about that incorrectly. Maybe I misheard the way she said that,
yeah. So
but still, like you said, it is an interesting dynamic, right? Like she doesn't have a son, Jake doesn't have a mother, and now these two are coming together, and it's like he's got a mother now and she's got a son now, and it's this weird dynamic now that they're building here, this relationship.
this is talk about your mixed families.
Yeah.
This is like a sitcom, right? So you can combine like you can make it this sitcom. Oh yeah, like oh our my parents are actually from different universes, and so you mix it in like that.
It's like All in the Family, but with the Siskos. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So, uh, it's evident that Jake wants to spend his time with his quote unquote mother. It's evident she kind of wants to spend some time with him. They're getting to know each other, right? They're
Yeah.
having dinner in the quarters. And meanwhile, however, there's the lead, the big, I don't want to say the capital ship, but like the lead ship for the Alliance, commanded by, now we meet for the first time, Worf's mirror character called Regent, the Regent. He's a regent for the Alliance. And so this lead Alliance ship is commanded by Regent Worf. And it's on its way to, surprise, surprise, the station. But Regent Worf has a familiar captive.
That's right, Garrett. As kind of like a slave right there.
Mirror Universe Garrick is a little too much like Prime
Yes.
Universe Garrick. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of you're like this is Garrick if he stayed in the Obsidian Order. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the same. It's like the same Garrick. He's
Mhm.
self-serving no matter where it goes, but Garrick is Garrick.
No matter what universe, Garrick is still the same.
Yeah. You know, I felt like Worf to be not really like Worf, but just kind of a Klingon. I guess I
Yeah.
felt him more just like this. The mirror universe version of Worf was just like this a archetypal kind of Klingon type
Yeah,
character.
a power
Yeah.
hungry, like I don't want to say stereotypical, but kind of a stereotypical, like commanding Klingon, right? Who's
Yeah.
his ship, he's in charge. Don't you cross him, he'll kill you. He's gonna do whatever he needs to do to get his way, kind of thing. That kind of like you think of many different types of Klingon captains.
Yeah. Yeah. It's totally what I got out of it as well. Yeah. So um so there's that. But shortly after, we are back on the bridge of the Defiant where Cisco is working on the Defiant, excuse me.
Mhm. Well, don't forget too, really quickly before we go on, Chris.
Mhm.
Um, it's important to note here that Regent Worf blames Garrick for losing the station, right? And
Mhm.
Garrick
Mhm.
is, as usual, his weasel self, even in the mirror universe, right? He is saying, "Look, it's not him to blame, but it's actually the intendant. It's the intendant's fault. It's not his fault. It's the intendant's fault." And that they should try and just sever ties with the intendant. The intendant is being held hostage by the alliance, no, not excuse me, by the rebels in this case. And like, we should just cut ties with her, whatever. Like it is what it is. And Worf decides that he's going to deal with this himself and tells Garrick basically that, he's going to be forced to fight. And Garrick's like, "Yay, I get to fight. Woo!
Yeah.
Lucky me." But the downfall is that Garrick is chained with a big chain around his neck, and Worf is, constantly pulling and tugging on it. And it's very obvious that this relationship, what if you want to call it that, is very one sided, right? Like Worf is
Yeah.
in charge. He's made it known he's in charge, and yeah. Worf isn't going to release Garrick until all the rebels are taken care of. So Garrick now has some type of motivation to say, well, I guess I got to do this, or I'm going to be held hostage in these chains and shackles forever until he kills me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but I just want to kind of
No, that's
state that
good.
because I do think that's important, right? That to understand, like, okay, this is why now Regent Worf is kind of gotten involved, and who he's blaming, and now Garrick is a mess, and he's trying to suck up to the boss because that's kind of something that they would do, right? And um, trying to plead with Worf, sort of. And then we jump over to the Bridge of the Defiant. Now, knowing now why the Alliance is headed towards the station.
Yeah. Ah, very, very, very good point. Yep. So on the Defiant, we have Captain Sisko like run in, have an exchange with Dax. And so I thought that was kind of a funny exchange for me because
Yeah.
Dax hears that he's back on the station. She comes up to him, slaps him in the face, and she's like, well, that's you know that's that's for last year for us being intimate, like under false pretenses.
Yeah.
And then Cisco says something like, well, you didn't seem to notice at the time. And it's kind of, I mean, they acknowledge this is totally like an acknowledgement of what happened in the last episode.
Yeah.
Because when that happened in the last episode, it was such a shock to me. Right? I'm like,
Right.
oh, are they okay? I guess they're gonna like have a romance now, like Dax and Captain Cisco,
Which
and
is weird too, right?
yeah,
Because they were like old man, they have Curzon Dags, and now all of a sudden there's this thing, and you're like, hang on a second, this is kind of. I mean, it was weird. It was very weird, but now they're kind of addressing that, like you said.
yeah. You're right. It was weird. The whole time I was thinking, all right, so is the Mirror Universe version of Dax, is that Curzon Dax in there? Is that the old man version of Dax? I'm like going, all right, well, whatever.
Yeah.
So um that's one of those like weird like romances that happen in Star, because there's like plenty of like weird romances that happen in Star Trek. So this is
Very.
this is for me like one of the weird ones that happen. And
So you're a big TNG fan, obviously. It's your
yeah,
favorite one, right? I'm
yeah,
I'm a big TNG fan as well. Did you ever feel, talk about speaking of weird romances?
yeah.
Did you ever feel like Worf and Troy's romance was weird because of
Do
all the pining and pruning that Riker and Troy had?
Mhm.
That little kind of brief relationship they had was really weird.
It was so weird. And so this is what happened with me. I had Okay, it must have been like so weird where I actually blocked it. So I blocked it, and then in my mind I was like, well, I don't think it really happened. I think it was like a dream thing, and I don't think it happened. Um, and then when I was doing the rewatch, and I came back, and I'm like, oh no, this really like happened. And so my block then my got unblocked, and I was kind of reliving this weirdness and like going,
Yeah.
well, I was just yeah, on the TNG thing, I thought it was pretty awkward, and definitely like, I mean, certainly it changed the relationship between like Riker, like and Worf, and of course Deanna, and this like huge triangle totally. And did I you think it was as weird as I thought it was weird?
Yeah, I definitely thought that whole thing was weird. That the Troy Worf thing was weird, and I think it's hysterical that you're like, yeah, I thought it was a dream, and I was just blocking it out, and then I went back and rewatched it. It was actually a thing, and my blocking went unblocked, and I wanted to block it again. And
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree. So I just thought that was kind of something similar, right? It's like you're like, this is really out of left field. Like, did Cisco really have a romance with someone who is Dax, but not Dax? Like, what's going on here? What's the angle here? But very, very
Totally.
strange. But she was not too keen on the idea that she was fooled by thinking that he was the Mirror Universe Benjamin Sisko and not this other Sisko that she didn't know.
So if I was Cisco, I could never bring I could never bring the Prime Universe version of Dax over to the Mirror Universe version of Dax because it'd be like, wouldn't wouldn't that be like awkward, right? So
Right.
so if they, because then the Prime Universe version of Dax would be like, oh, so what happened here? So
So like, hang on a second. You went to the mirror universe and went after my doppelganger. What's wrong with you? Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely. I'm not quite sure what they were thinking on that one. Other than I think Cisco was trying to play the role to stay believable as the mirror universe Cisco in order to get where he needed to get to and do the things he needed to do and survive basically
yeah,
up to that point. But yeah, very, very weird relationship there. Um, and so that kind of whole exchange where she's ticked off and everything, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, I won't do that again." And uh, then you hear a scream, and then they run out to the hallway, and then the attendant's being tortured by Bashir
yeah,
and for trying to escape. And Cisco, I think, makes a good point here, a good line where he says, "There's a difference between interrogation and torture." Uh, and of course, the rebels, in this case, the Terrans, have been under the hard iron fist rule of the intendant for quite a while, obviously, and so they have no qualms with making her suffer because she's made them suffer. She's killed their friends, their family, things like that. But I liked how Cisco stepped in and said, he kind of projected in some Federation values there, right? Like there's a difference between interrogation and torture, which is funny because Cisco tends to go a little bit into the gray area of things in DS9 as a captain or commander slash captain. Uh, Maybe more than some of the other captains did. And if you're curious about different captain scenarios, be sure to go check out previous episode we did with the Where's Bev podcast, a collaboration we did with them on the what if scenarios where we took different captains and plugged them into other captain scenarios and asked what we thought they would do. By the way, that was such a wonderful episode. We've gotten such great feedback from folks. People have reached out to us and said, "Hey, that was so fun. It was such a great idea. I really love the format of that." I had just a couple messages this past week of people saying that they really like that. So,
oh, it's
um,
awesome, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad that you all watching and listening have enjoyed that. And if you haven't, go follow Where's Bev podcast. They do a great job over there. So, anyways, but that being said, uh, so Worf reaches the Alliance ships or reach the Alliance ships and is told that what the ship that they're building, and that of course only angers him even more.
yeah.
In fact, Garrick then Garrick's like, if I may be so bold to recommend increasing to warp 9. And Worf's like, shut up. And then he's like, it's still your fault, the situation. And he's like, all right, increase to warp 9. Which was funny. So yeah, then you find Cisco after being on the Defiant all day, goes back to his quarters, and there's Jake and Jennifer having dinner.
Yeah, yeah, and Cisco's tired, and Jake and Jennifer have had a great dinner. They've had chicken a la Cisco. They
Yeah.
invite, they're inviting Ben to have dinner, but he's just too tired. You get a nice moment afterwards where it's a sensitive moment. Jennifer's kind of giving Ben a massage, saying, "Hey, you've been working hard." Um, just she's trying to comfort him. Um, but I think this is where I think it's this at this part. It's where Cisco says something like, because they're kind of acknowledging the circumstance, acknowledging the situation, and Cisco says something like, "Yeah, um, don't know if any of this was like a good idea. All of us being here together." I think it was at that part, and Jennifer's just kind of taken aback by that. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's trying to keep his distance from her
yeah,
because my guess is is that deep inside Cisco's head, he knows that it could be really easy to fall for her again,
Yeah.
right? And fall in love with her, and he doesn't want that to happen because he knows it's not his Jennifer,
Hmm.
right? It looks just like her, sounds just like her, but it's not her. Um, and that poses a kind of a question we can get into now or later, it doesn't really matter, but this idea of, if you lost a loved one, but then you found someone else who was identical in almost every way, at least physically, to that person, and they had the same name, like it's another version of that person. Would you allow yourself to get close to that person or have a relationship with that person, or would you keep your distance knowing that that person really isn't the person that you lost? Be really, really hard. I mean, look at Jake, for example. Look at what he's going through. It's not his mother, but yet he's drawn to her. And so I think Cisco knows that, obviously. So I think he's trying to keep his distance, knowing that he could be so easily drawn in to her just because that's she looks like his wife who's passed.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Great, great question. Who knows what would each of us do? And that's where I get a- I have a little bit of question, like when I'm thinking about these mirror universes, because it's almost like it it is the same person, but there were just different environments, different circumstances. So there's a difference there. But if you think about physically, is it the same person? They would have the same, almost like the same DNA, all of the same physical attributes, but it was just the environment in the particular universe, right? That kind of changed the person. So yeah,
So if it
interesting.
but if that I so yeah, let's talk about this, Chris.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if the universe, if the situation, everything, if that changed them, then are they really still the same person? They may look the same, but if they've been changed because of the circumstances and the situations they've gone through and the events that they have lived through, is it really still the same person then? Because by going through different situations and having a different life, right? And different um events and things that happen to them, they now kind of hit this crossroad, right? Where maybe because of those situations, this person now makes these decisions and acts this way, whereas those same situations that the other one didn't encounter, they're this way, and this is the one that you know. So are they the same person, or are they completely different because of who they have become?
I don't know, because if
Me
we,
either.
yeah, yeah, but I think it's a great one, because if you think about like the idea of like the multiverses, and
Yeah.
like every time we get to like a decision or a juncture point, like it spreads off to um every time there's a decision, it splits off into like a different universe, right? So, and I think about, okay, if that was me, and then I just have these couple different decisions, but then I'm split off into two different versions of me, but at the core, maybe I still had the same beliefs and the same values, but I just had to make like a different decision, um because of whatever was going on at the moment. um Man, I don't know, such a good question.
So I look at maybe a possible answer from this episode in the eyes of one person, and
Jake, yeah.
I look at Kira.
Kira.
Look at Kira. So Kira and the Intendant have vastly different events, vastly different
Mhm.
environments, vastly different situations and worlds and universes that they have lived in. Is the Intendant capable at the core of being the same way that Kira is, or vice versa? Is the core of that person changed because of the events and the things they've gone through that have shaped who that person is? Or is that core untouched, but and it can be changed if given a different situation or circumstances? I don't think I know the answer to that. So far, what we've seen is at her core, the intendant is still vastly different than Kira, which makes me believe that the intendant is a completely different person, regardless of the fact that she looks the same as Kira and maybe has the same DNA and things like that. You could also argue Smiley as a reason for, well, Smiley's if O'Brien had this similar situation to Smiley, he probably turned out the same way too. That's where I'm like, I don't know if I have an answer for it. But the question is, at their core, okay, are they still the same person? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. The intendant is the one where I'd have the biggest struggle
Yeah,
having that. Miles O'Brien, Miles and Smiley. I think we each would say, yeah, they're pretty close.
yeah.
But
Kira
we
and the
even
Intendant are the hardest one.
yeah, and then actually, the versions of I mean, we didn't. We only saw the mirror universe version of Cisco briefly in the first one. I th- I think he was in the first one crossover.
He
Um,
was, he was. But I thought he was in the second one too. I could be wrong.
second one too, and they're really different. Those
Well,
versions.
they are, but I think that one could also prove the point of the what you're talking about at their core,
Hmm.
because at the end, the mirror universe Cisco does betray the intendant and helps the humans get away. Helps the Kira and Bashir get away because after all, he's a Terran. I think he even said that he's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah, that's true.
I'm a Terran." This is whatever. So you could make they could that could be used as an argument of, well, at his core, Benjamin still does the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. So that could be true. Maybe they are more like in the core there.
So
Yeah.
I think maybe my answer to this would be, if there's different versions of you, like, if there was a mirror universe or a multiverse for each person, right? And you were many copies of yourself, right? That maybe there would be certain aspects of you that might carry over. But I want to say that the the decisions, the choices, and all of the things that have gotten you to this point that have made you who you are would then fundamentally change the core of your being. Because you think about, okay, Cisco, right? And he goes through, the academy and becomes Starfleet and becomes a captain and everything like that. And so he has these foundational principles that the mirror universe Cisco doesn't have. There's no federation. He's a Terran. He's on the run. The only reason he has the freedom he does is because the intendant is kind of in love with him to a certain extent. So I would argue, just based on observations from these mirror universe episodes, that there may be some similarities uh across the character, but I think their lives that they have lived has changed the core of them because of what those things have made that individual become. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, that completely makes sense because what they learn throughout their lives would have fundamentally like changed them who they are.
Yeah. Those things they've learned and those experiences and those events, whether they're happy, excited events, or they're tragic or they're horrific or whatever, those things are shaping their core, right? Like if I had like if I had lost my parents when I was little, that would have fundamentally changed me at the core than them still being alive. You know what I mean? So there is differences, I think, that would to a certain extent shape who you are. If you have religious beliefs, those would fundamentally change you at the core versus a version of yourself that didn't have those beliefs. You know what I mean? So I do think that there can be similarities across versions of yourself, but I do think the core of who you are is going to be shaped by the experiences that you've had in your life. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
at this point, this is I think what you're talking about, where Jennifer finds Cisco in the junction on the Defiant working. And that's where he kind of pushes her away, right? And he says, "Hey, I don't think that we need to kind of keep separate." I don't remember the specific thing he said was something to the effect of, maybe this connection really, the connect. She mentioned something about a connection between them, and he's like, yeah, maybe that connection really wasn't genuine,
Ever
wasn't
real.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was never real. And then you could just see kind of her face go, oh, because I think she's starting to kind of fall for him, right? Because this version of Cisco is different than the one she married.
Yeah.
And she likes this version of Cisco, and he has a son that she seems to be drawn to as well. Um, so that's a big deal in this episode, right? It kind of pushes her away, and then I love the fact that we go back to the promenade in the mirror universe, and there's Jake at his usual spot, even in the mirror universe.
Yep. And he is just contemplated like again, right? But I think Jennifer arrives to get Jake. Um Nog, Nog does visit, Nog does kind of visit and get there, and then I think Nog just says some kind of things to Jake that are kind of not so nice,
Yeah.
right there. And it's Jennifer that arrives to take Jake away.
Yeah,
Um,
and Nog is very different, like you mentioned earlier, right? Nog is the owner of the bar, and he's kind of taking on the Quark role, right? Like, hey, you kids, get out of here, kind of thing. Stop loitering and leave this area. And you can kind of, I mean, you could tell, right? Jake already misses his buddy because Nog is off at Starfleet Academy in the Prime universe, and then this version of Nog is not amused whatsoever by Jake and any of the ideas of them being friends in another universe and so forth. And that exchange, you could tell, kind of shook Jake a little bit, right? Like, okay, he's got this mother. It looks like his mother, but it's not really his mother. He's in this weird place. It looks like a lot of things back home, but it's not. He sees his buddy, but it's not really his buddy. I mean, you talk about confusing for a young guy.
yeah, and it's actually when you think about Nog in this episode, it's actually Nog that frees the intendant. So
Yeah.
Nog sets in motion like um the tragedy that kind of happens, in
Yeah,
the rest of
Nog sets in motion the next two DS9 Mirror Universe episodes, really, right? Because he frees the intendant, and then she pays him back by shooting him and killing
Yep.
him.
Yep. She kills him and she finds Jake and Jennifer, and she's kind of holding them at phaser point right there. Um and she's curious, the intendant's curious like why Jennifer feels that Jake is important, because the intendant doesn't know like who Jake is. She
Yeah.
just knows like, hey, why is this like person, why is this boy like so important? Um yeah, so uh, we so the intendant, you know shoots, she means to kill them all essentially, and Jennifer sacrifices herself to save Jake. um and that, was a really kind of that was a hard moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, I definitely think so. This is the idea of the intendant being completely ruthless, completely cold-hearted. He's like, "Oh yeah, I won't tell anybody I saw you, whatever." And she's like, "Yeah, you're right." And then she shoots him, and she's like, "Yeah, you won't be telling anybody or whatever," something like that. Like she's just real cold-hearted.
Yeah.
Um, it almost makes me think too this way, Chris. Like you see these mirror universe characters, right? And it's almost like is the mirror universe version or the prime universe version an alternate, just basically another personality that's a part of this core being, right? So you take Kira for example, right? This is maybe the most difficult one in the Mirror Universe episodes. So we know that Kira was a freedom fighter as part of the Bajoran militia in fighting against the Cardassian occupation. We know that from previous episodes and the show thus far, right? Into season 4. So, and we learn more about it even later on. So if we know that she was at one point a killer as part of the militia, does that mean that the intendant is a piece of her being that exists because of circumstances and events? Like, what I'm trying to get at is the intendant is a representation of a piece of Kira that we know will do what she needs to do to survive, will kill when she needs to in order to accomplish a mission or a thing. And it's not necessarily that the intendant is so vastly different from Kira, but rather that the intendant is a persona of the Kira being itself. Maybe that's just way out there in ether, but I was just thinking about that. Like, to say that Kira is not capable of what the intendant's doing, it might be wrong because Kira had to do some pretty rough things during the occupation. Now she's going to justify why she did it because of what was going on, but would the intendant not also justify it and say, "Well, I'm just trying to survive." Like Kira was trying to survive in the occupation. So is it really that the intendant is doing stuff that Kira's not capable of? I would argue no. I think Kira's capable of doing the same things the intendant's doing, but we know she doesn't because of different circumstances and events.
Yeah, to me, it's yes, I agree that the personality and the characteristics of the intendant are inherent characteristics of Kira, right? And so the mirror universe is just a reflection of hey, if these they're a reflection of these attributes that are within you that manifest in different ways, like in this universe. So that is very much like a part of Kira in both universes. If you think about Captain Kirk in um, the original series,
Yeah.
the mirror universe of Captain Kirk, they allude to him being very, very ambitious, and you figure out, you learn in that series that he's got this device that is able to take out those that are higher up in the chain of command than he is. I mean, he uses that so that he can advance his own career.
Right.
But that idea of ambition, we always know is very much like that's a core kind of characteristic of Captain Kirk. And with Captain Sisko, what I felt with Sisko was in both the Mirror Universe version of Sisko and the Prime Universe version of Sisko, I always felt there's this kind of underlying, like, seething um anger is not like the right word, but he can bring out these these emotions like very, very, like, quickly, these aggressive and assertive emotions like very, very quickly. And you see that manifested in the mirror universe of Captain Sisko. Yeah. So I think both in the Prime Universe version of Sisko and the Mirror Universe version of Sisko, I always felt that there was uh, underneath, there's kind of this feeling of, it's not quite anger, but really strong, like, assertiveness, or this high level of, like, energy and emotion that he could bring out. Passion's the right, I think, right word.
Yeah.
He's just got this
Yeah.
high level of, like, passion. And I think that mirror universe of Sisko, you could see that taken to a negative kind of side, right? There's so much passion there. It went in a negative direction. You hear this because he's a womanizer, apparently. So
Yeah.
there was all of that. So yeah, I think what you were saying about Kira and the intendant and those core characteristics very relevant, like very very fitting. I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that could actually be maybe the answer there, right? Like maybe this person has core characteristics, but based on events and situations in their life changes maybe how those core characteristics are applied in their life, right?
Hmm.
And how they're utilized. So okay, so we know Nog's killed, right? The intendant kills Nog. Then the intendant runs into Cisco and Jake. And we at the same time, the station's being attacked, right? The Alliance arrives, it begins firing on the station. Cisco's on the bridge and he's getting ready to leave. And Smiley's like, yeah, I wish I could have, had more time to learn this shit and blah blah. You're kind of like baiting Cisco a little bit into staying, and Cisco's like, "All right, I know the shit better than you. Get out of that chair, Smiley." And he takes the captain's chair where he rightfully belongs, and they start following their commands. And so that's where now Cisco is leading the Defiant and helping teach Smiley these different maneuvers. I love when he's like attack pattern Delta, and Smiley's like, "What the heck is that?" Because he wouldn't
Yeah.
know if he had said I, you'd be like, this isn't right. But he doesn't know that, right? And so they're fighting and everything. And I love the battle scenes here where the Defiant's weaving and bobbing around through the ships, and um, it's weaving through the station and everything, and Smiley's trying to outrun him. Uh, and then we also see Kira back in the corridor, the intendant, I should say.
Yeah.
Uh, and letting Jake and Jennifer know that she's going to take Jennifer as a present to the Regent Wharf.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where I think this is where Jennifer gets shot by the intendant.
Yeah.
Um,
But not
say, yeah,
intentionally, right? Because Jennifer goes to save Jake.
yeah. Jennifer sacrifices herself for Jake,
Yeah.
which is a very moving scene.
And a
And the
motherly thing.
Mhm.
Something that a parent would do.
Yeah, because Kira, the intendant asks, like, well, who is she to you? And Jake says, well, she's my mother. And that's where the intendant kind of connects the dot. Just goes, oh, you're Cisco's son. Okay.
Yeah. And so she knows. She you kind of think, right? Like if they had not said anything, maybe she wouldn't have fired on Jake.
Ah, yeah.
Maybe, maybe she would have still, but the urge to shoot Jake maybe wouldn't have been as great because like, oh, you're Cisco's son. Oh, well, let me just take you out then, you know. Um, so that was pretty hard to see, right? She shoots uh Jennifer and then leaves. And now Jake's having to deal with his mother in his eyes, kind of, sort of his mother, you know, fighting for her life.
Yeah. The second time, which has got to be harder for Jake for sure.
Right, because the
Yeah.
first time she died in the ship and he wasn't with her when she died.
Hmm.
This time he's right there and sees it happen.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Kira, the I should say the intendant is like she leaves Jake alive and says, well, now and the reason she's leaving him alive is just to send a message to Cisco. It's a very cruel thing to do, but
Yeah.
essentially saying, "Oh, well, now you're in my debt because I spared your son's life." So just a very very cruel thing that she does there.
Yep. Yeah, and so the Defiant now is having to fight against the Regent's flagship, right? This is I want to say it was a Nechbar class or something like that. Um, some of my buddies back home will give me crap because I didn't know that off the top of my head, but that's okay. It's okay. It's fine. Not the first time I haven't remembered something.
I
But
didn't remember
yeah,
it. I didn't remember it.
yeah, I don't off the top of my head. I mean, we have these Star Trek trading cards back in the day. This playable card game that had it, and I don't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, so we get to a point now where it's like Cisco decides he's going to take the wheel, so to speak, in the Defiant because he knows the ship so well and starts flying the ship instead of Smiley. And that definitely helps, right? He's able to maneuver around. He knows that ship pretty well. And so yeah, they're fighting, they're doing damage to the region's capital ship, and although the Defiant's taking a bit of a beating herself,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden Bashir and Dax jump in. They were going to take off, right, and go off on their own, do their own thing, and then they come in and help to shoot down the flagship, and then it scurries away. Although there is a scene where they shoot one of the nacelles, and I would think by hitting the nacelle, it would knock their ability to go to warp out, but apparently not, because they warp off
Mm.
and they retreat, even though Worf, the idea of retreating is beyond him, but Garrick tells him something to the effect of, wouldn't you want to, live to fight another day, or whatever it is he says there, and then Worf, I guess, is finally convinced, and then uh he's convinced that this is all the intendant's fault via
Yeah.
Garrick.
Yeah.
And then Garrick's like, I promise you, if we capture her, whatever, just let me be the one to torture her or something like that, and kill her myself. And so the battle, they take off, the battle's over, and then we return to the station where we find a very upset Jake in the infirmary with Jennifer.
Yeah. And Jennifer's kind of at her end right here. And there's a touching scene with Captain Sisko and Jennifer. And, he pretty much says, hey, the connection was always there. And that's the last kind of moment they have together. And then she's able to, she passes from there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was a tough
yeah,
scene.
yeah, it was tough. And then you have father and son like embrace, and you know Benjamin Sisko says, hey, let's go home, Jake, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to bring up the moment there, but there was a line, and I was looking at this in Memory Alpha. There was a funny line that I'd forgotten about.
Yeah.
I was going to mention this earlier, where uh, they're on the Defiant, and they had that the capital ship cruiser, and I think it's Smiley says something to the effect of like, that cruiser has us in the weapons range. Do we make a run for it? And Cisco goes, we run all right at it. And Smiley goes, pattern suicide. Like,
Yeah.
it was a funny moment. I thought that was that kind of, humorous, like, sarcastic O'Brien piece there.
Totally O'Brien. Yeah.
Totally, yeah, very, very O'Brien. But yeah, I did find the line too you mentioned earlier, Chris, where Jennifer says, when we first met, there was a connection between us. Now, because of what I've done, it's gone, isn't it? And he goes, I'm not sure it was real to begin with.
Yeah.
That's tough. That you could that's his way of basically telling her, like, yeah, no, we're not a chance. I mean, that's his way of pushing her away. That was a hard line, but very impactful at the moment, especially given the ending.
Yeah. And I think it was just a self-defense kind of line. I think Cisco would have fallen for Jennifer. So in my mind.
And vice versa too, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because basically they had both lost each other's counterparts, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot intertwining here. And then I thought about this too, Chris. I don't know if you thought about the title of this episode and relating it back to the end of this episode, right? That the title of this episode being Shattered Mirror, and thinking about, we had Through the Looking Glass, now we have Shattered Mirror, and Shattered Mirror to me represents the idea of them looking at their, what should be their wife or mother or whatever in a mirror, and then what their life could have been had that person still been there, looking at that in the mirror, but now it's shattered because Jennifer's passed away, and how that image, right, that you see in that mirror or could have seen in the mirror is now gone because of actions committed by somebody else, and that shatters that mirror. I don't know if that's, if you were thinking about that, the title, and how that related to the ending or not, but that's kind of what was rolling through my mind there as the episode ended.
Yeah. All of those same kind of feelings I had. I had the same feelings on the title there. Um, this you're seeing a reflection of possibilities, and it's gone.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, one I think a really well named episode, given how it all unfolds, right? And it really makes sense, and it draws back to the idea of uh this image, this reflection, and what that looks like, and you know, other images of, okay, through the eyes of Jake, right? And that's why I was saying in the beginning how I think that you, if you look at this episode, the focus of it is based around Jake, right? Jake's taken to the mirror universe. He's getting to know his mother, well, a version of his mother, right? And he sees his friend. He thinks this is
Hmm.
his friend Nog, but it's not really, and Nog doesn't want anything to do with him. And he sees this image like in a mirror of the station in a different way of life than what he knows in his own universe. And so, to me, the focus of this is solely based around Jake. Yeah, Cisco's there, Jennifer's there, but this is all about Jake. This is about him and reconciling the idea that a woman that's identical to his mother is still alive, and his friend, who's not really his friend, is there, and all these different things. This is his first. This is his first go in the mirror universe, so everything is new to him.
I do think it is all primarily about Jake. He connected to the first scene where he's on the promenade and he's essentially people watching.
Yeah,
But he's people watching, and then he has this kind of internal narrative where he's thinking about stories for the people. So he's watching the people walk by, and then he's interjecting stories like on each of them. Like he says something about, oh, this guy has a toupee, like as they're walking by underneath him. So in Jake's mind, he's thinking of all these stories of what could be.
yeah,
So completely natural that, when he encounters Jennifer, he's thinking about like what could be. And Sisko kind of realizes that, because
yeah,
Sisko's like, I already know what you're thinking. you know and I think Sisko was resisting, like at first, kind of resisting, but I always felt like uh, underneath that, Sisko was kind of accepting of the idea, because he kept going. He kept going, well, I'm really mad at the situation, but I'm still going to help you.
yeah.
So
Right.
he kept saying that, I'm really mad you did this, but I'm still going to help you.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
because he knows he doesn't really have a choice, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, we know too, Jake's a writer, right?
Hmm.
And we see later on in the series about how Jake even stays behind on the station after the Cardassian Dominion come over and occupy the station, right? And he stays behind to write from the front lines. Now we know also, if you've watched DS9, not you, Chris, I mean you as
Hmm.
in the audience, you. We also know later on that the stories that Jake's writing about don't make it out because there's a filter put in place, a censorship put in place by the Dominion. Um, but Jake's a writer. And so I think that you really hit on a good point, right? He's people watching. He's thinking up stories and ideas and concepts. And I wonder if the experiences he has in the mirror universe with basically losing again, sort of his mother and these other the other versions of people he knows. Imagine the amount of stories and possible novels he could write just out of his experiences in that one trip to the mirror universe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Big, big, big time, you know, collaboration of ideas and concepts for writing that we know he would do in the future. But this was a good. I know we can't have this before. I know maybe your thoughts on this episode as a whole, Chris. I thought
Yeah.
this was a very very relationship driven episode from the perspective of the Ciscos and Jake and Jennifer, and it was really all geared around that the whole episode was based around that three-person dynamic with Jake, Jennifer, and Captain Cisco. So just overall kind of curious on your thoughts about the episode Shattered Mirror.
Yeah, I thought it was smart that they went and explored the Cisco relationships, because I think this was a natural episode to do, particularly with the history of the Ciscos.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the idea was really good. This was really, really smart. It was really, really good to do it from the perspective of Jake. As I think about this episode, I actually found myself kind of wishing that um that hey, they could have used, I think this idea they could have even gone farther. I felt like oh, did they need to kill like Jennifer? Because that was I mean, how much more are you going to put the Cisco's through? You know,
Well,
so
hey, O'Brien suffers enough. Somebody else must suffer too.
yeah, yeah. So I felt like they could have kept this idea of Jennifer. I felt like they didn't need to kill her so soon or kill her at all. It's not, not that they needed to end up together as a family. I don't, but I felt it was just so abrupt to
Mm.
end this version of Jennifer. So that's where I felt like there's still more that they could do. Still more that they could do with this kind of thread. So that's where I was kind of feeling like at the end, going, oh, I felt a little bit of lost opportunity with this idea to continue on. Um, so that's kind of my overall. I'll feel for it. How about you?
Yeah, just I think overall, I enjoyed the episode. I thought there was some good action. I love the battle sequences there with the station and everything. The relationship dynamic was certainly important as they dive deeper, continue to dive deeper in the Cisco relationships. We see this now. This was in season 4. This is later in season 4. This episode comes out. Before that, we got Homefront and Paradise Lost, which is kind of like a two-part episode, which I absolutely love. I think two of the best episodes in DS9, where Sisko comes back to Earth as kind of like a security liaison because he's been dealing with the Dominion, and the Changelings infiltrate Earth, right? But that's not why I mentioned those episodes in relation to this. I mentioned them because that's where we see the dynamic where Sisko comes home, and I believe he brings Jake with him. And we meet his father, and we see like the New Orleans, like in New Orleans, we see the restaurant and like the more of the Cisco family dynamic. And so um, we've already gotten that when this episode comes out. Now we're getting another aspect of the Cisco family relationship and importance of that. So to me, I really enjoyed that part about the episode. I think
Yeah.
they could have this particular mirror universe episode could have been a multi-parter. And I also agree with you in the sense that I wish maybe they hadn't killed off Jennifer, or maybe they would have left her alive and then maybe explored that further in future episodes. Um, but by killing her off, that now opens the door down the road for a very young Cassidy Yates
Yeah.
to come in and become a love interest of Cisco. And I loved Cassidy Yates and the relationship that her and Benjamin build, especially when he discovers that she's been smuggling stuff and they now have to face that, dynamic. I really loved Cassidy quite a bit. So I hated that they had to kill off Mirror Universe Jennifer, but I think if they hadn't, maybe that wouldn't have opened the door for Cassidy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that relationship.
Yeah.
And
Certainly.
and oh, by the way, even though his mother's dead, and even though his Mirror Universe mother's dead, Jake is the one that sets his dad up with Cassidy Yates. So that kind of the healing process and everything, I think, is important there. So yeah, I'm a big Cassidy Yates fan. I love the whole dynamic and what she brings to the station and to the Cisco's, and so it is bittersweet though that
Yeah.
they kill her off, because I can't remember the name of the actress, but the name of the actress who plays Jennifer, I thought was really did a wonderful job.
Yeah. Yeah. She sure did. I agree.
Yeah. So, well, this has been great, Chris. We jump back in the mirror universe, and it's awesome to exploring the mirror universe and kind of just seeing it unfold. Even though it's not back to back to back episodes, but just seeing it unfold over a series of episodes. There's two more Mirror Universe DS9 episodes that we will get to at some point as we continue the Spotlight series of the Mirror episodes. The next one is called Resurrection, and then the one after that's the Emperor's New Cloak, which is a little bit more of a funnier take on the Mirror Universe. And then of course we get into Enterprise, and they're In a Mirror Darkly Part 1 and 2, which are absolutely fantastic episodes. So we
Yeah,
look
they
forward
are.
to exploring those episodes and deep diving those in a future spotlight episode here on the podcast. But this has been great. It's good to be back after having a bit of a break there, and just because of scheduling and everything. And so we look forward to coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Like I said, we are going to have Caitlin Hopkins back on with us, which will be wonderful. And we're working on some other stuff as well. And as soon as we know the other things, we'll let you guys know for sure. So be sure to stay tuned and check us out everywhere you get your podcasts. Of course, on the YouTube channel, if you're already here, that's wonderful. And be sure to go on Facebook and Instagram and find us there. Follow us there for our latest happenings. And we look forward to more spotlight episodes and other celebrity guest interviews in the future, Chris.
Oh, it's going to be fun. We got tons of stuff to talk about. We're going to enjoy it and have fun with our audience and you and I as we go through this
Yeah.
journey together. Yeah.
I totally just forgot about this. We
Yeah.
got to mention it. So there was an announcement. Strange New Worlds was renewed for season 4. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
they're making season 3 right now, and they've already been green lighted for a 4th season. So we at least know we have 2 more seasons now of Strange New Worlds coming down the road. Hopefully even more after that. But so far we have season 3, which is currently filming, and then season 4 has been greenlit. So
Most
that's
excellent.
awesome. Really excited to hear that. It just tells me that Strange New Worlds is doing well. It's popular, and I know you and I are both very much enjoying that show.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And man,
Absolutely.
we've had some really good deep dives on some Strange New Worlds episodes. There's been some really good ones.
We need more episodes with Leon and Nurse Chapel, so it'll be
Truer words have never been spoken, my friend. Truer words have never been spoken. But that being said, thank you everybody so much for watching and listening as always, all over the globe and the interwebs. We very much appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt podcast.